tuia ka roto, tuia ka waho, tuia tātou te tangata ki te kaupapa o te hui nei ki te kaupapa o te rangi nei, Māori ora kia tātou katoa. We have apologies from Councillors Dowler, Kinnamonth, Mailing and Mackenzie and Shellcrass. Someone move the apologies, moved Councillor Hill, seconded Councillor Walker. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. And we'll now move to the public forum. So one person registered to speak, that's Mr. Schaeffner. So welcome. I will commence your time, give you a nod at 4.5 minutes-ish. Okay. Not registered as the group though, just for clarity. Are you speaking on your individual behalf or on behalf of?
On behalf of the group, but I try to keep it short.
Okay,
will be 5, 6, 7 minutes.
Right, over to you.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. Your meeting today is as I see it, is a lot about financials, and my speech touches maybe a tiny bit on this. Maybe it's an idea how you could save a bit of money. And there was an interesting comment this morning in the meeting from Councillor Greening, and I wrote it down because I found it really interesting. He said, quote, "We are manufacturing," that was his word, "manufacturing the volume of Legoima requests," quote end. And I fully agree with such a statement. And if you really manufacture your own workload, then I think that's a financial issue, at least in my opinion. And I think it was at the beginning of this year, probably the first full council meeting of this year, there was a task given from you elected members to your chief executives, and we can read about this in the meeting minutes. It's on page 10 in the confirmed minutes. It says, quote, "Ms. Ray to include a breakdown of Legoima requests by individual requestors and the topic of the Legoima request in future chief executive updates," quote end. That was in February, and now we are in October, and we had so many meetings in the meantime, including chief executive updates. But until today, I have not seen such a breakdown of Legoima requests in any of the chief executive reports. And I don't know why that is, because I would expect, and very likely anyone in the public would expect, that if the council appoints a chief executive and gives clear instructions to that chief executive, even recorded in the meeting minutes, then this task gets done. And I think the task was clear, to include a breakdown of Legoima requests. And people outside of your organization, if their boss tells them to do something and they don't as an employee, then I guess that this would have consequences. And if my boss tells me, "Mr. Schaeffner, you have to do this task," and I ignore it, then my boss would not be happy about this. And I'm personally not happy that we are in October and I still cannot see such a breakdown of Legoima requests. So, Mr. Mayor, how do we deal with this? Do we get this breakdown of Legoima requests at some point? And if yes, then when? Or we just ignored what's written in the meeting minutes? Well, there was a direction to Ms. Ray, but who cares? Yeah, but I care. I do care about this. And not only because I'm personally interested to see this breakdown of Legoima requests and what other people request, and not only because it's a question of integrity in this council between your governance role and the executive branch, but I think most importantly because I hear more and more and more about other people who made Legoima requests, and they also don't get the information that they requested. And I strongly believe if we can see such a breakdown of Legoima requests by topic, it would show us if it's really the case that a lot of Legoima requests are trivial or vexatious or frivolous, or information cannot be released because of privacy concerns, legal privilege, or whatever the excuse may be. Or maybe, just maybe, we see that people ask normal questions because they care. People care what's going on with your organization. And if we would see all the Legorma requests when the response is published on your website, then people might not ask the same questions over and over again, and that saves time and eventually money, because your legal and democracy team seems to be under a lot of pressure at the moment, or under-resourced, however you call it. And that's even up to the point that the Motueka Community Board cannot get a secretary anymore. But I think that community boards play an important role. On the other hand, for some reasons, I had access to invoices from external lawyers that you use, and they charge quite big sums of money. And what was visible, that they are not only helping with legal proceedings, and I won't respect the rules and won't talk about that, but what we can also see, that they are involved, these external lawyers, in topics like Legorma requests, Privacy Act requests, and privacy complaints. And your external lawyers, they charge a high hourly rate. And this is concerning. If you look at other councils, they publish responses to Legorma requests on their website. Some of them even publish all responses to Legorma requests on their website. Some group them even by topic. And that's not only the big councils like Christchurch, Wellington. We only have to look to our neighbors, the Nelson City Council. They publish a lot of responses to Legorma requests on their websites. People can read the request and the response on the website of the Nelson City Council. And then it leads to the question, why is it that the Nelson City Council is so much more transparent and open compared to this council? You know, they also respect the recommendation of the Chief Ombudsman that their workshops are open to the public by default. And here in Tasman, we cannot even get a breakdown of Legorma requests by topic. Even that it was said we would have it at the beginning of the year. I mean, if you were more open and transparent, then I strongly believe people would not ask so many questions. And it would result in less workload and less money spent, or less costs for your staff. So in conclusion, it's extremely frustrating for people that care about democratic principles if they have to deal with people that don't care about democratic principles. And I just hope that this changes at some point in the future, in the near future. Because that would be awesome if we all care about democratic principles. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your time.
Thank you. And moving on to the agenda. So declarations of interest. Councillor Greening.
I'm just getting my video off because I'm aware that we're having some bandwidth issues in the last meeting. Can you hear me?
Yes, and could you just turn your camera on? If we do have issues with sound, then I'll raise that, but we'll try camera on first.
Well, I'm unable to. The bandwidth is not letting me.
The what?
The host has stopped it apparently.
Oh, happy days. I didn't know you could do that. Try now.
Fantastic.
Oh, there we go.
Just to admin questions, really, before we kick off. I'm conscious that we've got a full council meeting booked, I think, for the 24th, and this is classified as an ordinary meeting. So is the 24th meeting still proceeding, or will that be an extraordinary meeting?
No, it is meeting. The 24th is still a scheduled ordinary meeting.
Okay, so are we now having more regular meetings? I thought it was every 6 weeks. We're now having every 4 weeks, is it?
It's not a standard change. It's just there's a lot of stuff on agendas, and therefore trying to manage our collective time. I think the 24th agenda is quite large, so this item has come up prior to that.
Okay, just so people are aware, and myself included. The other question was just in relation to public forum. Have we declined any requests for public forum? It's just that it's been brought to my attention that there was a request to appear today and it was declined.
I will ask Elaine to comment.
Through the Mayor, there was a request for public forum today, but it was regarding a matter that was considered through a special consultative procedure, and there were hearings, and so our standing orders allows us to decline matters that have been the topic of a special consultative procedure because it's giving people more than one bite at the apple.
So does that mean that when we're considering stuff, for instance, like I think last week, which we went into committee on, so I can't really say much more about it, but people were making submissions on the topic in public forum?
Sorry, I'm not sure what you're referring to there.
So we were deliberating in committee.
So yeah, so obviously you can't go there.
And there was a public forum matter on it. I think from Julian Rain and maybe a few development planners.
That public consultation hasn't started yet. The refusal was for a public consultation that has just finished.
So the consultation has that consultation is finished. I'm just trying to get, or the one that.
Yeah. So the one that was a subject to the meeting you were talking about hasn't started yet.
Yes.
And the one that is subject to the decision today has finished, just finished.
So I thought deliberations. Oh, so it has finished, so they could come back on
the public
24th?
hearing part of it has finished. So I guess the key point is if you go through a public consultation process, people make submissions, and between the point where they've finished submissions and hearings and a decision is made, giving one of those parties the opportunity to effectively make another submission is under the standing orders, we have the opportunity to decline that. And that is the reason that the person in this case was declined. So because they've had an opportunity to speak to the special consultative procedure alongside all the other people, and an issue of fairness, giving one person the opportunity to have another effectively 5-minute submission to the council was considered not to be appropriate.
So can they speak at the next 24th meeting, or do
they could speak again post the decision being made, potentially, if at that point they still wanted to.
Is that the hearing decision or the council decision? So I'm just trying to get clarity.
I don't want to get into the details. I'll find out the exact details, but so the decision was made to not enable someone to have another crack at speaking publicly on a topic that they'd already submitted, that a hearing has been held, but a decision has not been made. So post that decision being made, and I don't know the exact time frame off the top of my head, then if they wish to come and talk about the process or provide their perspective or view on how that all played out, I'm sure they will be welcome to do so, post the decision being made.
And the decision being made, you'll come back to us with clarity on when that is, or at least the person.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, right. Late items we have none. Meetings of previous minutes to be confirmed from the 2nd of October. Someone prepared to move? Move Councillor Hill, seconded Councillor Ellis. All in favour, please say aye. And the confidential minutes of the same meeting. Move Councillor Ellis, seconded Councillor Maru. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. So the first item we have is the quarterly Treasury report. James, I think you are leading this with the support of Mike and Matt. So I'll come over to whoever is going to speak.
Kia ora koutou. Has everyone read the report yet? Okay, cool. Taking it as read. Does anyone have any specific questions? Because there's nothing particular that stands out. No covenants breached.
I just had a question around interest rates. I noticed that we've had quite a activity resetting interest rates, and I just wondered if we might have gone a bit earlier, or have we still got more that will be refixed?
Mike.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. The swaps that we've entered into, so the interest rate swaps, we've entered into a part of our normal program of work. And so I think currently we have about 55% of our debt is fixed, and the balance is floating rate. And of course that debt falls due over a number of periods, right out to 5 or 6 years from now. So we're working in that space. The swaps that we've just taken have been used to fill in the medium term gap in terms of our interest rate cover. So we're locking in cover medium term. The commentary in the report around the Reserve Bank, as always, I've been proved wrong by the Reserve Bank, and in fact they have dropped the overnight cash rate, or the official cash rate, by 50 basis points yesterday. And that will bring a downward pressure on the short-term interest rates. A lot of that has already been built into the current rates. So we remain with a challenge as is set out in the report, that our average borrowing rate at the moment is in the order of 1% higher than what we budgeted in the long-term plan for this year. That's going to put some considerable financial pressure on the organisation, and we're working through how we might address that issue.
So just a follow-up question, if I may, Mr. Mayor. Mike, just in relation to that last comment, and the Reserve Bank have another announcement late November, I believe, and it's speculated already that there'll be further reductions. Are we looking to get some lending down to balance up that 1% more that you've been talking about? I'm thinking if we get some lowering of our average, that may well bring that 1%. I'm assuming that's an average.
Yes, the interest rates in the Treasury report are the weighted average interest rates. And so we have debt that we are, shall we say, rolling over all of the time. What advantage we can take of a lowering of the short-term interest rates will depend on what debt we have rolling over and what demands we have coming on council from the Capital Works program. So yes, it'll be rolled into it, but I'm still concerned about the level of pressure there is on the interest rates, notwithstanding we could see some downward movements this year. Thank you.
Further questions? So just a follow-up question. So was it considered in the assessment and the choice about fixing those medium-term rates, whether to leave a greater percentage of the council's debt in the short-term market?
Yes, that was a consideration when we had our meeting with our Treasury advisors about a week ago.
I would be following on Stuart's point. It was kind of pretty well signalled that we're going to cut interest rates, and it was only really a question of whether it was 0.25 or 0.5. They went with 0.5. As Stuart says, there's already quite significant speculation that they'll cut again. So I am interested to know why our advisors provided advice that may not have picked up that general sentiment.
Sorry, I've probably mischaracterised it for you. The advisors did indicate they expected a downward movement in the OCR, cash rate. Whether it was going to be 25 points, 50 points, or 75 points was a matter of conjecture, shall we say, at the time. Our challenge is that a lot of those expected movements are already built into the rates. And so even though they come out and they might say, okay, we're going to have a 50 basis points, if 89% of the market thought it was going to be 50 basis points, it's already reflected in the current rates. So you don't get the pickup that you might otherwise think. And the ones that flow through, for example, for mortgage holders when the banks move, you'll notice they typically move on their floating rate mortgages long before they move on the fixed rates.
So that is effectively the comparison that we're doing between a floating rate and a fixed rate. And fixed rates tend to be less subject to movement based on the immediate cut to the OCR.
Now, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Greenie.
Yeah, just trying to get my head around some of the figures. So you reported in terms of total debt for September, 372 million. And earlier in the report, in March, the total debt was 332 million. So that's a $40 million increase in a couple of months. Interested to know what the driver is for that. Similarly, we've got net debt at $261 million in September. What was our March net debt figure? I couldn't see that. I may have overlooked it, but I couldn't find it there. So interested in that. Also interested in terms of debt, and I'm curious with dividend payments. I'm just curious to know whether that's been funded by profit or debt, i.e. are we shifting our debt to the port and airport by way of dividend, in which case our true debt position might be slightly different.
So 2 questions. One is the March debt figure.
Well, yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Essentially, we've got a capital works program that's funded by debt predominantly. We spent $94 million last year. A lot of that actually occurs in the back half of a financial year. Plus, we're spending again. So that's
the 40 million difference.
Yeah, that's
effectively at the back end of the capital works program. Yep. And the March debt figure was
through the chair. The March net debt figure was about $228.3 million.
So again, that movement's the same movement.
Okay, thank you. And the second question was in relation to dividends and debt in port companies and airport companies. Mike.
Through Mr. Chair, yes, I was aware that notwithstanding the poorer financial results at the port board chose to keep the dividend at the level that they had indicated in their statement of intent. I'm not sure whether they needed to borrow additionally to fund that dividend. I can look at their accounts and ask them that question, but typically the board would be reluctant to borrow in order to fund the dividend. It's likely that they have retained less earnings for reinvestment in the port in order to make the higher dividend payment.
Okay, thank you.
We appreciate if we could get clarity on that, Mike. Thanks.
Thank you. Right. Any further questions in relation to Treasury report? If not, is someone prepared to move?
I'm happy to move, Mr. Mayor.
Move Deputy Mayor Bryant, seconded. Councillor Dakey. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Next up, we have the activity balances, 2024, item 7.2. Paul and Mike, supported by Matt. Or Matt, supported by Paul and Mike, or whichever mixture of people that.
Yeah, no, look, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to let Paul talk to this, but I might just provide a little bit of commentary around why you are getting this sort of out of cycle. Financials are always best if it's timely. Historically, these 2 reports get to you in about the 22nd, 24th of September. The reality of the 12th of September, which was the council meeting, just meant we couldn't do it. Equally, this is really important to get the ratification of carry forwards so that the business knows the funds are approved and can actually spend against it. So hence the out of cycle meeting. In terms of the activity balance report, yeah, we'll just take it as read and happy to take questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Paul, is there anything you want to add before I open it up for questions?
Matt summed it up well.
Excellent. It's open for questions on any of the specifics contained in the activity balances. Councillor Greening.
I'm going to raise the same point I raised this morning and put to Kim, and I've raised it before for council meetings. I do think it's important that we not only get the activity balances, but we get the group financial reporting. I know we have shifted it back quarterly, but I think given the pressures that council is under and given the shifts that are occurring, certainly in the environment portfolio, building consents, etc., it would
So apologies, Councillor Greening. Things were going splendidly, but you may now have to turn off your camera.
Going down. We've got expenditure going down. It'd be good to get a good picture, and I think we need to be more across it. We were told that we were going to get these quarterly updates on groups. I really haven't seen them. I really do think it's now more important, given the financial pressures, that we actually see these slices, these financial reporting in the committee reports, and if they're repeated in the quarterly cuts, I have no problem with that.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, certainly we do quarterly financial reporting. The next set is coming on the possibly the next council meeting, 24th of October.
Yeah.
So that will cover those off. It's by exception, and we bring things forward that matter. Equally, yes, there are various reports of a financial nature that come through in terms of the other committees, the operating one especially in terms of capital projects, etc. So we do, attempt to cover it off as best we can. But certainly a quarterly report. It's always slightly problematic in a 6-weekly reporting cycle compared to a monthly cut-off. So again, it comes down to timeliness of when you get that information sometimes. But unfortunately, it is what it is in terms of the schedule of meetings.
Okay,
Yeah,
and you would anticipate, just to round out that question, in terms of the,
when we used to have these reports coming to the committees, I think there was greater oversight from the governance team over what was going on, and we did push back on some of the numbers we were seeing. So, and we got explanations, which I think is important, but I don't think we're getting that from the quarterly reporting that we've moved to. That's
certainly through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly the opportunities there for any and all questions on those quarterly results. Certainly historically, and I think it's been raised at council, finance has not necessarily got the questions perhaps from the governance side of things that we were expecting. But the information is there. The group managers are tuning up to talk to those reports. So from my perspective, the information is available, and maybe the 24th is an opportunity to ask more questions perhaps.
Okay, and I just to round out the question, or the principle that Councillor Greening's, should there be an issue arising or developing in any particular area, and I know we went through the issue around the 10-year plan and the deficit in the building consent, so I'm only using that as an example. So I'm expecting that should there be identification of a particular issue developing and cost recovery or extra costs being incurred because of certain circumstances, that will be brought through probably the committee meeting in the first instance and flagged with the council through that process. So we can be assured that should there be concerns being raised on the exception basis that you mentioned, Matt, that will be brought to the attention firstly of the committee concerned and then wrapped up into the advice that the full council receives.
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Further questions in relation to the carryovers report? Councillor Dakey.
Thank you, through the Mayor. 4.13 curbside recycling and 4.14 resource recovery. Deficit there is quite large, and I don't know if the explanation really tells the story. Any comments on that particular activity?
Mr. Mayor, I'm just reading it. The commentary was provided by the manager associated with waste curbside recycling, David Stevenson. So look, I can't add much. Richard may be in a position to, or short of that, we may have to come back with more information.
More information might be useful at some point, as provided later, maybe a benefit. Thank you.
So if we note that specific item and circulate the follow-up advice to all of us. Deputy Mayor Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few questions from myself, if I may. Firstly, just around community housing and the commentary there, surplus balance of 1.27 million, and a significant amount of this is tagged for asset replacement program. When is that likely to kick in? You're aware what it is. Just I was aware when I was in Murchison the other day that the pensioner cottages there are getting less adequate than all the time. So I just wondered if we're looking at a large project or it's just going to be used for maintenance, that 1.27 million. Because I'd sooner see it being used somewhere rather than just sitting in an account.
That's very much fair. My understanding is that is part of the regular maintenance and renewals program for the activity. I would need to go to the property manager to get a deeper explanation of what the plans are in terms of community housing. Certainly the stock is older, but my understanding is it's still relatively well maintained by council. And one of the reasons why you're able to reinvest in those units is you're not carrying any debt in relation to community housing.
Right. And then if we step down to the next one, halls, and just the balance referred to there, 1.18 million, is that in council's account? And I'm aware that a number of those hall accounts actually have their own accounts with substantial money in it. And once again, personally, I'd like to see them reinvest it in improving the halls rather than just keeping the money in their account. And I know it does say asset replacement and deferred. I'm not aware of any asset that's being replaced hall-wise.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, a similar answer in that an asset replacement is not necessarily the whole building. It's parts of in terms of what we class as capital. By rights, the answer rests in the asset management plan associated with that activity. So that's a conversation we'd have to have with that particular manager, and again come back to you with more information.
Thank you. And then third and finally, just around the resolution around the special grants fund of 50,000. I take it that's a recommendation from staff. Has consideration been given to using that in any other areas rather than just a special grant? Certainly through COVID, that was used for events or to stimulate the local economy. Not sure we quite need to do that so much now.
Through Mr. Mayor, the recommendation is mine. I chose to keep the current practice in place. And I also chose to recommend that you hold back some of the additional rates money because we'll have a particularly challenging year with costs, and certainly in the annual plan that's coming up. So the recommendation is consistent with the decisions you've made in the past years.
Would it be beneficial to use it towards something in the annual plan rather than the special grant, though, I guess is where I'm heading.
So you were looking to not necessarily spend the 50. I got the distinct impression you were looking at spending some more of the 750. That's what made me nervous. So you are asking the question, in the current financial circumstances, do we actually not allocate the $50,000?
Would there be somewhere more beneficial within annual plan?
You're asking the wrong guy.
Yeah, well,
or the right guy.
Yeah, well, it depends on the answer you want, doesn't it? The chair of the grants committee might have a different idea.
Through Mr. Mayor, that's really a decision for councillors to make. It is difficult for staff to make those judgment decisions. At the moment, I see no compelling reason, given the size of the additional rates collected, that the $50,000 couldn't be used for the purpose it's traditionally been used for.
Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, on that, I know that it's one of those ways in which we get really good bang for buck, isn't it? So I think one of the projects last time was the mountain bike track that's getting built on Takeka Hill, formidable looking thing. But, you know, that group are working really hard, a lot of effort going in, and that amount of money, which, you know, didn't seem a lot in a way for them. I don't know what we gave them. Maybe we gave them 15 or 10, 12,000 or something like that. You know, they were thrilled, and it just gets those projects quite a bit further along and gives them momentum. And actually, Golden Bay, in terms of a mountain biking little scene, and, you know, becoming a bit of a destination for that. They had a fantastic event over there on the weekend, where you had to sort of hit all these points over the weekend, which were like, you know, from Anatori to Totoranui to the Cobb and up somewhere else. And, you know, a whole bunch of people in town drinking beer at the Roots Bar afterwards. So, you know, you wouldn't think about the conversation here about what do we do with $50,000. You wouldn't think about the Roots Bar keeping going, you know, as they're heading towards summer. So, not in short, but I'm certainly supportive of us continuing to do that.
Okay. I'm not getting the sense there's much disagreement over that. I would highlight the fact that we may well get to the annual plan conversation and be looking for $50,000, or considering not doing something else that costs $50,000 in order to maintain ourselves at the 7%. But I understand the logic and the rationale. So anyone else got a view just on this while we're on this particular topic before I go to other speakers? Councillor Greening.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding was that the $50,000 was set up as when we've got some extra money that we put it into the account. And given the ballooning debt that we're having, I really do struggle to see that we've got a surplus to invest in these types of things. It was always a nice to have fund when we had the surpluses. So really struggle to understand how we can continue with it when debt is ballooning by $40 million in a couple of months, and the financial pressures are coming on council.
Yep, I note the point.
So there is a motion to roll it over.
No one has moved a resolution yet. So, but yes, included in the resolution
that's another
is
question,
indeed,
really, is when we roll
is indeed.
they then get authorised to be spent, or are we reviewing them through the annual plan before we really do fully commit to actually spending all these carryovers?
So at the moment there is a recommendation yet to be moved. So we'll wait and see what the council decides when we get to that point. Speaking of which, is there a mover or seconder of the resolution? Councillor Butler.
Yeah, I'm happy to move. I just have a question about just following on about community housing and halls. What comes to mind is that these surplus balances might just sit there and get carried forward year after year after year, and actually the purpose that they're there for doesn't get done. That's, is there a flag for that? And I know that it's up to the actual departments to spend that money, but that is, the worry that things just get delayed, and the community might, be concerned about that, because, in order to keep the surplus in there.
Through Mr. Mayor. Yes, there is a process. Every time we look at the budget, whether it's the LTP or whether it's the annual plan budget, and we're looking at annual plan budget in the next month or two, the activity balances are taken into account. So you'll see elsewhere in the commentary, for example, that we have taken deficit balances and we have put additional funding in the next 4 or 5 years to repay those deficit balances. The same applies to surplus balances. We can program them moving forward, which we typically would do. So we run the surplus balances down somewhat over time. As regards the particular balances in halls and community housing, I need to have a conversation with the property manager to ascertain what the current situation is, what the budgets moving forward are, therefore what those projected activity balances will be in the coming years.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it's been moved. Is there a seconder? Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor. So I'm happy to second it, but there's a little proviso, and that's that the Carryover that Councillor Dakey has asked for comes through for the explanations of why those two figures are so alarming, and there's no story to back them. The thing with the housing is that's a closed account, and it is my understanding that Councillor Dakey and I, and potentially Councillor Ellis, have pushed really hard to have a workshop come forward to talk to that particular closed account, and we have assurances that that is happening. And as for the general rates with the special grants, we've already put that out to community. I think it's too late to now just turn around and say, no, sorry, the 50K's gone. So I'm happy to second it if those things are noted. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Laura, I think it is important because if you look at the waste in total, so Councillor Dakey raised the $1 million deficit in RRCs, there's also a $565,000 deficit in curbside recycling, but a surplus of 1.16 in waste minimisation. And if I was a layperson and I was kind of inclined to ask, I'd go, well, hang on a minute, you know, in that overall bucket, you have still a deficit, but it's so I do think a further explanation of the link between the two and the fact that some of that money does have to be spent in a certain area is important, because just like I used the example of building consenting previously, it's not helpful to get to a point of an annual plan or a 10-year plan and find $1 million deficit in any activity. So I think that definitely requires a further follow-up. So noting Councillor Walker's point. Councillor Greening.
Yeah, I'm just following up on my last question. I didn't really get an answer to it. It kind of got deflected, which was when we are committing to these carryovers, at what point are we going to be reviewing them? You know, theoretically they're carried over. We've got annual plan workshops, which I would have thought is the opportunity to reevaluate where these are going. And I'm just concerned that approving these will authorise staff to then go off and spend them when we're trying to signal that this should be just a rollover while we review, is what I'm trying to get to. And I imagine that's what some councillors are pushing for, a more speedy workshop on these things before. For example, I think there's 300k for a service centre toilet, which is still being discussed, I think.
Matt.
Predominantly the carryovers that we're talking about in both this report and the following report are where contracts have been let and we've got a commitment. The opportunity to actually look at the whole program of work as part of the annual plan is where we get where you guys get an opportunity to push things out. Generally, these are ones where we're committed to it, hence needing that budget moved.
So 300k for the Mott Service Centre is contract committed, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, look, I don't know the ins and outs, but not necessarily. I'm really not aware of that particular item. However, if it's not committed, I would suggest the annual plan process would allow you to review that.
Yeah, so can I strongly emphasise if there isn't a contractual commitment, that we flag that as reviewable for our annual plan process and staff can aware of it.
Point noted, Councillor Granny. I'll just get Mr. Kirby to comment.
Yeah, that Motueka one, you will recall that you've still got a report on the table regarding what you do with the old library and Motueka Service Centre. We've put that as a carry forward. You are going to potentially make a decision in November on that. And if you don't go ahead and don't need that, then obviously that's budget you don't have to spend.
Okay, so it's not a commitment to spend it, Councillor Granny, for clarification.
That goes for the 50k as well, or is it fully committed and lined up?
I mean, ultimately it goes for everything, but the resolution enables that to be the case, and we're yet to put the resolution, but the resolution currently includes the use of the 50k for special projects or special grants. Ultimately, depending on applications and decisions, I guess we'll decide down the track if this resolution is passed. Anything to add, Mike?
Just process. It appears to be a little bit of confusion. I think I can assist councillors. So in effect, the carry forwards adjust the budget for this year. The money's carried forward. And then we forecast where we're going to be at the end of the year. That gives you your opening position for your annual plan. So automatically through the process, the carried forwards or carried overs or activity balances brought forward are considered automatically as part of your annual plan. And that includes those activities which have surpluses and those which have deficits. And so it's not lost in terms of the process and definitely taken into account when you do your annual plan process.
Thank you, Mike. The resolution's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Against?
Against.
Carried. Would you like your vote against recorded, Councillor Greening? He did. I don't know.
I'm just highlighting the fact I've mentioned I voted against before and it hasn't been recorded in minutes, so I've given up recording it. If I'm really keen, I'll call a division. Thank you.
I think that's a yes. Please record Councillor Greening's vote against. Right up, the next item is capital carryover report. Paul and Mike and Matt again. Paul.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I'd just like to introduce the report. I'm going to take it as read. And if councillors have questions, please ask me.
Thanks, Paul. So again, this item is now open for questions, obviously, and/or moving and seconding. Any specific questions anybody has?
Oh.
Yes.
Well, I'm just going to
Councillor
repeat
Greening.
what I reported before, which is basically we're in a very tight financial position. There are capital carryovers. Again, I understand the contractual commitments, but where there aren't any, and we've got budget. And I know Richard Kirby has responded to this question, but again, I'm just emphasising, given what we saw in the quarterly Treasury report, it's not happy reading, and belt tightening is definitely required. And yeah, not much more I can say really.
Okay, yes, I mean, I think the point has been noted and Mike's explained the relationship between this decision and the subsequent annual plan discussions. Are there any further questions about the specifics contained in the capital carryovers report? If not, is someone prepared to move? Councillor Dakey, is there a seconder? Councillor Hill? In the absence of any further questions, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Right. I think that is it. So no further reports. So just after we meeting, does this go? Oh, I'll come across to Steve, who just wants to clarify something raised in public forum. Then I'll close the meeting, and then we're just going to get a quick briefing from Kim in relation to another item. Steve.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I just thought I might be able to clarify for councillors something that was raised in public forum. We do publish Lagoimas on our website. We theme those wherever we can so that there's not an exhaustive list of individual Lagoimas, because they can vary quite a lot from one Lagoima to another. So they are published on our website, and they have been for some time. And the CE's report since the requirement in February for Leone to include a commentary about Lagoimas, it's been included roughly, as I look at the list, in every meeting. I just want to look at the dates because there are some that are missing, but that's because I think end of June and 1st of August is the monthly period for those meetings. Whilst it doesn't contain individualised information about Lagoimas, that has been omitted for privacy reasons. There are some Lagoimas that relate to individuals' interactions with council that are private to them, so we don't mention individual names. But certainly there is a summary of the numbers that we've received, and there is a link in the CE's report to the relevant website where those things are available. So I just thought I might clarify that for councillors.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I will, unless there's
because I think I asked this last time, and I can't find them on the website, Steve. So the most latest. Oh, have you?
Well, there we go.
Latest one I've got is 8th of 2nd, 24, the Waimea Community Dam. Maybe there's a link that I'm not here.
So if we want to
come talk to me afterwards, councillor.
Yeah, so if you want to clarify what's on it and then have a chat with Steve, it will be on the CEO's report, no doubt, for the meeting on October. And so there will be an opportunity. Sorry.
Can we just part of that clarification on how often they're updated, because the dates on these are pretty old.
Yep. Okay. So we will follow that up. The item will be on in the CEO's report on the agenda for the 24th. And so it would be useful if there are specific questions, rather than leave them till the day of the 24th, that you wish to ask about the Lagoima report when it comes out. Fire them through to Steve so that he's in a position to provide any answers that may be required. Councillor Greening.
Just to follow up on the last full council meeting, it was asked from councillors for me to circulate an emails that I got from customers in relation to what they consider to be poor service. I've circulated that, so councillors are now fully aware of that issue and how it could have been probably better addressed.
Yes, thank you for circulating that, Councillor Greening. Right. I will now close the meeting with karakia, kia horo te marino, kia whakapapa panamu te moana, aroha atu, aroha mai, tēnā tātou, tēnā tātou, tēnā tātou katoa, e tau mai ana. Thank you, everybody.